just like that, we're live everywhere. So welcome everybody, wherever you are coming from or watching us from. Randall, Nim's joining us. How are you guys doing?
Awesome.
Very good.
Fantastic.
Very good. So we're going to wait for Neil. We'll see if he joins us midstream. There he is, actually. He's coming in. Brits are always a little bit, late, aren't they?
Drive with style. That's what we.
Yeah. Well, we'll let it be this time. All good. Well, since this was your topic too, Neil, we wanted to make sure you were there. But so we've got Nim joining us as well. And I'll do a quick intro. But Nim, maybe you could just tell us a bit about your company, Crucial Logics, and what you guys do. When I look at Nim, rockstar cybersecurity company who knows what he's doing from an MSP perspective. He's got what it takes. So Nim, give us the better version of what you do.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Julian. Nim Nataraja. I'm one of the founders of Crucial Logics. I run advisory, risk, and assurance. We're a Microsoft Gold partner and all things security. So we help our customers as well as other MSPs offer security platform solutions in the Microsoft ecosystem to our customers.
And when you have a problem, Nim is a guy who shows up, right? He doesn't like talk showing up. He actually shows up. Randall, as everybody knows, he's in our Channel Partner Alliance, and Neil runs the whole platform for the Channel Partner Alliance, and also a business guru, if you will, helping businesses navigate. And we'll talk about this and about what it means. Now, there's a lot of talk about the downturn, right? We haven't really seen it yet, right? We've seen a lot of the inflation, as we know. We've seen a lot of gas prices, food prices, and so on. Much to do with the supply chain, I believe, right? But it seems like people are talking about it. And sometimes, when humans talk about a recession, sometimes it happens, right? So I'm going to give everybody a little bit of a take. What do you think about what could potentially happen? And what's your gut feeling from the community and the people that you talk to and the businesses that you're involved with? Nima, since you're new, I'm going to let you jump on this.
Sure. A recession in the tech space, it really starts with, a sentiment that large companies feel in terms of should they or should they not spend, depending on how much of their top line sales are at risk, right? So what we're starting to see is a little bit of slowdown on capital spending, but that sentiment is really coming from the uncertainty associated with, Q3, end of Q3, beginning of Q4, and not being very clear on economically where Q1 is going to be from a sales perspective from the end customer side. But this sentiment from an NSP perspective could be opportunity, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later on as well.
So you're actually seeing customers saying, hey, whoa, let me slow down a bit, right? So you're seeing it in real time right now.
Yeah, a bit of slowdown from a capital expenditure perspective, absolutely. And that has to do with a lot of speculation and uncertainty of what's happening in the marketplace, cost of borrowing going up, and inflation being so high, some of the supply chain challenges that are happening. So it has this whole downstream effect, right?
Very good. And since we like to have a global perspective, and Neil's dealing with Brexit and everything else that's going on over there. Good luck with all that stuff, Neil. But what's your take? What are you seeing happening right now in the economy?
Well, I think I agree with large capital projects are slowing down. It's anticipation of potential things even more than all the other complicated issues.
Neil, your sound is breaking up a little bit. Maybe you want to change that or change maybe your browser to Chrome or something. Are you using Safari?
I am in. How's that now? Any better?
You're breaking. Not really. So we'll let you figure that out. Maybe you can jump back out and jump back in. Maybe use Chrome or something. Randall, you pick it up where you go. Technical difficulties. We move on.
Well,
Randall, what's your take?
I think of the economics as, from a global perspective. And from people like, I like Robert Kiyosaki from the Rich Dad Poor Dad guy. And he's predicting this massive stock market crash. But historically, people lose their shirts when there's a stock market crash, while others become rich. So the whole point of that, buy low, sell high. Well, that can come into different factors. I think even in our industry, when you have an economic downturn, there are always possibilities to pick up things for a low cost. I'm thinking of companies maybe merging together to both survive. If one company is struggling, another company can come in, do some sort of partnership, and both can survive, keeping all those employees employed and doubling up on the work, but also reducing the expenses. So there's so many opportunities. I can't wait till we get into this. But as always, like in the real world, when things go bad, there's always an opportunity. We just got to know where to find it. I hope we explore that today.
It's time to start digging. Neil, how's your sound now?
Is that any better? Better now?
It's start talking. Give your take.
So, in the UK, I was saying projects slowing down. Still all fine.
No, still not good.
I'll try another browser. I'll be back.
You got to jump off and jump back in. This is the one thing about live business is that when it's live, it's live. All right. Well, let's just carry on while Neil figure out some sound checks there. So, in this world, it's kind of weird going on because we're seeing people talking about a recession, but we're really seeing, like, you go to a restaurant, prices is up. You look around, employment is like an all-time low, right? Everybody is hiring people. Salaries are going up, right? So all the weird things that you would normally see, like people laying off, some laying off is happening, but you're not seeing that on a large scale, right? So it's kind of like unusual. Maybe it's a different flavor of recession, and we're not economists, so we don't know, what's going to happen. But we do understand a little bit of business, and let's talk about what we're seeing in the channel, right? And then let's start digging in. So, Nim, what are you thinking that companies, MSPs in particular, should be doing to sort of prepare just in case there is this recession?
Well, recession or not, I think, my suggestions are kind of global. As part of running a business, whether it's good times or bad, these are things you should be considering. But knowing that we're entering times of, uncertainty, these are a little bit more prudent than others, than at other times. So number one, I would definitely say is optimize your talent. Now is not the time to be going on a massive hiring spree, and nor do you want to be put in a position later to be on a massive firing spree. So let's optimize. Let's make sure we're, aligning our talent, making sure there's utilization of everyone within the organization, and mapping their capabilities of where they need to stretch a little bit, where they can fulfill other demand within the organization, so that you're not going to be left last minute trying to go find people or trying to release people. Right? Optimizing talent is key. That's one. So
optimize. Good points. Let's see if Neil has fixed his sound.
Hello, Houston. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. There you go.
So I'm just gonna, it's clearly Safari's fault, not mine. That's a relief. Phew.
It's always IT.
It's always IT. I'm messing up well with our support guys. That's all I'm going to say.
Anyway, so Neil, what are you seeing in your neck of the woods? What from the economic challenges? What are you seeing?
Well, similar to NIM, we have seen large capital projects starting to slow down. Procurement cycle taking longer. Some projects being delayed by a quarter just to see which way that the board is going to land. I think the extra complication we have at the moment is obviously we've got the same global experience of soaring utility bills, all that stuff going on. But also our government at the moment, we don't have one because they're arguing about who should be leader, which means no decisions are being made. So I think at the moment, almost in the UK, everyone's holding their breath until we get the leadership election results and we know what future policy may be. And also, what I picked up from Lynn was saying earlier as well, is an opportunity. And if you look at any time there's a recession, it's always the best time to get your processes right, prepare yourself for the next upcycle. And what I find quite interesting, though, that therefore different reasons each time, look at that classic boom and bust cycle, and we're seeing that compressing and happening at greater and greater frequencies. So this is effectively the third one since 2008. So let's make sure we don't repeat the errors of the previous ones, take those learning lessons, and make ourselves ready to capitalize on the opportunities.
I do feel like as everyone, right? You have to deal with these ups and downs of the economy, right? So it's a matter of being prepared and to make sure that you've got, the ability to ride these storms out. It's just temporary. It's just a matter of, getting in the right position. Randall, what were you going to say?
Well, I feel like, in a football game, or there's always that halftime period, and it's really not a time for the team to, just rest and relax and, sip a margarita. This is when they're in there doing strategy to find out, how do we keep the lead, or how do we gain the lead if they're behind? So I think this time, like both Neil and Nim were on the money when they said that this is a time to really work on the business and really make sure that all the parts are moving well, that there's no gaps in our services. When you have a time to breathe, you can strategize. And I think this is a great time to have strategy, because going into when it gets busy again, if you haven't done the work and then it becomes too busy, you won't be able to do it at all. So you'll be left behind. I really see people that don't strategize as the ones that get left behind. It happens over and over again.
Well, here you second the motion. So let's talk a bit about what Nim said about optimizing your business, right? Well, it's a big word, but what does it really mean? Is it like cost, labor, automation, all those things? What are some of the most important things, Nim, if you wanted to categorize the top 3 things where you're burning cash that you want to make sure is right?
Talent, operations, for sure, and your internal processes, right? So optimize and streamline and cut out cost. Now's the time to do it. If you were thinking of buying some sort of a RMM tool or some software within your MSP to kind of make the ticketing and resolution and monitoring and management processes you follow easier, now's probably the time to consider that, because the more efficient you can function, the better you can serve your customer. And that's manual labor cost you're taking out of the system, right? And that you can use that talent for other things to deliver value to your customer within the organization. Operations, you want to make sure you have a CRM. You want to make sure you're using financial tools. You want to make sure that you're managing as much of the work within your business operations as possible within platforms and leveraging their efficiencies. And then talent, as I mentioned earlier, you need to make sure you learn how to do more with less, and don't put yourself in a position to compromise your staff. Where you have to go through a massive hiring because you weren't planful, and then you have to go through a massive firing because, again, you weren't planful. Right?
Would you say it's a great idea to actually sit down with your staff and say, look, this could potentially be a big hit for the company, depending on how you are, right? If you got enough cash flow. I think 82% of companies die because of poor cash flow. But let's say you have good cash flow, or maybe bordering that. You want to sit down with your employees and kind of level up, right? And said, look, guys, we might be in for a little bit of a storm, so we might have to buckle up a little bit, right? And should you have a conversation about that before the pandemic? Before the recession? Forget the word pandemic.
You nailed it, Julian. So my new tagline is, transparency is the currency of leadership. So if you're not willing to transact on a transparent manner with your customers, your employees, your partners, your vendors, you're actually setting yourself up for failure as a leadership. Like here at Crucial Logics, we meet with our entire organization once a month. We've got weekly meetings called the Crucial 30, where we, celebrate, have a good time, but also share business updates and wins. We talk about where we are financially, where we are to target, where we are to goals. And we're always very open and candid about the state of the nation. So nobody should ever be surprised with, a statement that we would need to make. Now, thankfully, knock on wood, we've always only had good news to share. And that is testament to, the other partners within Crucial Logics, Amal and Omar, our CFO and our marketing team and our leadership team, that we're able to deliver and maintain this standard, right? But it is difficult. Transparency is difficult because it requires courage and conviction from the leadership team to be willing to be vulnerable, to share something that might not be good news, to say something that might instill fear, to say something that might create uncertainty, but stepping up to manage around it. That is the most important thing. You put it on the table and you talk about how we're going to address this as a team. Right?
Transparency, love it. Sometimes the truth of the matter is that when you run a business very efficiently and effectively, there's really no downtime. There's no bad times, because you're really maximizing your revenue and potential during the good times, right? So that you're able to ride if there's any bad times, right? So mostly the companies that tend to struggle is, one of two buckets. They're really not well managed, right? Or B, they're just targeting a sector that's been obliterated, right? So, for example, during the pandemic, if you're, servicing the hotel and the restaurant industry, then you got a big hit, right? So you need to diversify those customer bases. So, well put. I mean, be transparent and make yourself as efficient. So let's say we're efficient, we're transparent. All of our employees are up to speed. They know what we're going to be heading into. Now what? What's the next step, Randall?
I always look for what is the need. If I think of a situation, let's say there's a neighborhood that has a high crime rate. Well, what is going to be an opportunity? Maybe monitored alarm systems, maybe guard dogs will be an opportunity. There's always something that needs to be fixed. So I think this is a great time to look at the industry and see what needs to be fixed. Security is the low-hanging fruit. If you're not into security, this is exactly what we need to be focused on. I mean, even today, they're showing how these Russian hacker groups are bypassing MFA. Well, they're not bypassing it. They're going after kind of orphan accounts that never had it set up. And then they're setting up the MFA. Then they have access to the account. And then they kind of do their thing. So there's so many things that we can do just with security that fills a niche right now because it's getting worse. And there's state-sponsored attacks. And sometimes it's random attacks. So you could be a target. Time to fix our own house and those of our clients.
It's a very good point, because if you're like at the border on the fence, right, and you get hit, I mean, there goes more resources to solve a problem, and that just might be the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? So you don't want to be getting a hit when you're down, if you know what I mean. Neil, now we've got all that things done, transparency, and we're optimized. What should we be doing and focusing now with our business?
Well, I think putting on my sales professional hat, the key thing straight away is what have we got to begin with? We've got a customer base. So we can be honest and transparent internally and externally, share with the community that broader picture and help them identify what they need to improve their businesses. So all the stuff we're talking about internally, about empowering our processes, getting the right systems and empowering our talent, those tell us all the products which we can then go out and sell to our potential clients. So if we are that trusted advisor, that's why I always think it's a great opportunity. And going back to that internal dynamic is making sure you've got the right people doing the right jobs. Make sure you got the right people who are relationship building, because you may have, in a growth market, you may have a killer team of hunters, but you've neglected to grow your pool of farmers. But now we need the power to be in our farming account managers rather than as hunter killers. So it's always keeping those things in balance. But businesses are always people, systems, and processes, the way I always view it. And I have written down, because I love it, transparency is the currency of leadership. I think that's actually is that a NIM original? Should I put your name next to it to quote you, or did you borrow it from most?
I'm sure I picked it up in a book somewhere.
You should have trademarked it. Now everybody's going to listen to it.
It's so true. It's so true in terms of if we the thing I would pick up what Nim said was actually having that conversation. Honesty and transparency. Nim hit the other nail on the head, was he talked about his own business and saying, actually, it's having a good leadership team. And for me, you guys who do this mass chat with me all the time, what do I always talk about every single time? You need that really powerful and clear and forward-looking senior management team, because their direction is what the staff buy into. So if you've got difficult times and you don't trust your managers, or you presume your manager's going to lie to you, then you may look for another job. But if you love your company, you trust and believe your management are doing the best thing for everybody, you hold on because you trust them. So lots of really great stuff which is coming out tonight, but also my brain saying, actually, for people who are watching this every single time it's on, it's like you can see these trends coming around over and over again.
I mean, if they listen to the 20 editions we did, they have a very good roadmap of how to grow your business. But let's double click on this thing with customers, because I actually think that's the way forward, right? So you've got a customer base, otherwise you're just not in business. So you've got a customer base, but do you really know what's in that database, right? Do you really understand the customer? How much do you understand? A first good exercise I would say is like get all your salespeople together and all your data points, right? And says, hey, I want you to tell me if you really know what's going on with these customers. What do you know about them, right?
You've got to reprofile them. Within every good CRM, you've got a profiling tab, but don't just look at it and go, that's where they are, because that's where they were when that question was last asked. So you're absolutely right, Julian. Get out there, profile everybody, find out, simple questions like, well, if you find out, what's your annual spend on software, what's your spend on hardware, and you just get them generic bands. You can then just look at your own numbers and say, well, I only get 30% of the business anyway. So it's relatively easy for me to try to get another 5-10% from those so I grow through recession, because they're tightening their belts, but that doesn't mean I have to lose. I can still take more of my share of the total revenue, but you don't get it unless you keep profiling. I'm a great believer, profile every 90 days. Every 90 days, reprofile. You may be speaking to the same person, but check where they are. Ask the same questions over and over again, and don't let that data become stale.
Yeah, business is moving. Digital transformation is making people accelerate so fast. One of the cool questions that I would ask if I was an MSP to a customer is like, what do you guys think about the looming recession, right? Do you think it's going to happen? Are you prepared for it? Are you worried? Are you bull on it? Are you, what's your thoughts, right? And then that's going to kind of set the tone, I think, right? If they say, oh my God, if this happens, we could be in some serious trouble, right? And if they say that, then I would then say, well, how do we avoid that? What do we got to do to help you reposition what you're doing to help you to, not face that problem, right? And if they were going to say, well, I think we're really positioned well, right? We've got everything, our ducks are in line, we're growing. I think this recession is not even going to, be a blimp to us, right? Then I would say, well, wow, now it's time to double down. Let's get those, technology in there to help you accelerate even faster, right? So it doesn't matter what they answer. The outcome is like figure out what they need, what their problems are, their challenges, and then come back there with a kind of a solution, right? That's the sales cap on, right?
I think so, Julian. I think the thing which the business have got to learn, I'm hoping that lots of people out there have learned this lesson, is to have those conversations and get good quality response. You need to build those long-term relationships. So I'm hoping that there aren't that many people out there in the channel business who are treating their client base as just numbers. If you've got really great relationship with those, at a human level, let alone the corporate level, when you say to somebody, how's it going? Sometimes they give you an inside gen on what's going on within their own department. And that could be really valuable to the sales guy with his head tuned on. So if you've not done it already, you've not really thought about it, make sure that you've got some proper internal training going on there, how to effectively build this long-lasting rapport relationship with all those key stakeholders. Because once you've got those relationships, the information pulls out. But if you've kind of ignored them because you've been far too busy for 6 months and things are getting sticky now and you phone up with all those lovely questions, don't be surprised if they don't want to tell you, because it's like, Neil, why are you taking interest in me now? You've ignored me for the last 12 months when you've been busy. So these things.
I want to send them a gift before. But Nim, so you're living it right now. Would you say that in your customer base, you've gone as deep and wide as you could? Or do you see that you need to go a little bit deeper and a little bit wider? What's your feeling?
I think
absolutely. So, sorry, go ahead, Neil.
No, I was just going to say, in terms of deeper and wider, I'd always say you've always got to try and go wider and deeper if you can, because that's where most of our revenue is.
See, Julian, this is the thing, right? I think in our MSP industry, when we have a conversation with our customer, the conversation is with intent to sell. You're not listening to understand. We're engaging to find opportunity and then say, oh, you know what? I think I have something for you, right? And the genuineness from what Neil is saying comes from the ability to have a conversation with an end client, knowing that at the end of this call, you're not logging an opportunity in your CRM. You're simply seeking to understand, form a relationship, and gain that intimacy in understanding what your client's all about. And if every conversation is transaction-based, like what Neil was saying, you're never going to get to a point where a customer is comfortable enough, because they'll be like, hey, he's absolutely right. Why are you asking me all of a sudden? Why does it matter? Right? So the opportunities organically arise from having that intimate relationship. and your understanding of where they are, where they're going, and why. But you can't just wake up one day and have that conversation and think you're going to get on the phone and get all your answers and it's solved. This takes months to develop because the fabric of that conversation is trust.
You got to build it for sure.
It makes me think of going to a clothing shop and having the salesperson come up to you says, "Can I help you?" And that's a loaded question because yes, we might want help, but we don't feel like it's authentic help. So we kind of say, "No, I'm okay. I'm just browsing." But really, maybe we're looking for an outfit for a wedding or a special occasion, and maybe we have a certain need in mind, but we will not ask because it's an awkward relationship. So I agree with Nim. It's more important to build trust than to build transactions.
So we all agree that we've got to be, as an MSP community, since we're talking to that primarily, even in the vendor community as well, right? You got to constantly be building trust, constantly be helping instead of selling, right? Because the more you help, you're actually going to end up selling. People buy from people anyways, right? And once they feel the trust and they feel you've got the right stuff, they'll end up, getting from you anyways, right? But now you're in this quote unquote situation. You've got a customer base, and the onus is on you to start digging in, right? You just can't just wait until the customer calls you and says, "Hey, I'm in trouble," or whatever that is, right? You got to be proactive, right? And there's some things you can do a little bit in advance. You know the kind of industry that they're in, so you have a general understanding if that industry will be impacted high or low. You can do some research of the company to see what they're doing right now, right? But there are ways to find information out about the company that doesn't require a direct question. So I would say that the end game here is to try to understand a little bit more depth about your customers, so you can go back with them with real advice to help them, navigate if there's a challenge and problem, right? So if we agree on that, what are some of the things that you think in general businesses in this world of digital transformation should be like a 1, 2, 3? What's the 1, 2, 3 that should be like a go-to solution, if you will, that pretty much every business should be wanting to do? Randall?
I don't know if I'm going to answer your question, but I think the first thing I want to do when I notice there's an economic downturn and I want to be helpful to my clients, I'm going to look for ways to actually reduce sales. Like, let's say find out if they have too many licenses for something and kind of adjust the count, or maybe they're paying for something they don't really need right away. Put it on pause for a couple months. And if you go in with a long-term goal of keeping that client for life, then dipping a little bit is not going to affect our bottom line that much, but it'll make a big difference to them, and they'll just double up on the trust, because as soon as things get better, they're going to get right back up, and they'll probably add more than what you had at the beginning. So sometimes even finding ways to sell less could be a huge incentive to build trust.
It's a bold move, but I love it. So looking at the customer and figuring out if they're getting maybe overused, if you will, overbilled in certain things, or maybe they could save costs in certain areas. A lot of people have licenses that they're not using, right? So it's a pretty easy way to start to, to cut back. Are you seeing them that there's a lot of, is there that much, meat out there in overcharging or overspending, if you will?
I would agree. I think overspending and overcharging most times is not intentional, malicious, on any MSP's part, but it's the customer wanting to buy a certain package. And I'm just going to use an example. Customer purchases Microsoft 365 E5. That is the Cadillac license. It has tons of features and functions, but they don't turn half of them on. They don't have the wherewithal. They don't know how. They don't have the team. They don't have the capacity, but they're paying for an E5. Well, if they're under 300 people, to what Randall's saying, you move them to a business premium. They're saving right there close to $50 a month. So That is just one example, right? This is one example. But to answer your question, and Randall, his answer is right in line with that, is there's no 1, 2, 3. It's demonstrate value to the relationship. Don't look at, ways of solving a particular problem If you hear them say, listen, this team's been fooling around with this Power BI dashboard, they have no idea how to do it, they're kind of confused, and you have somebody on your team who understands this, get them on the call, connect them. Don't have to monetize that. Just go and solve the problem. Demonstrate value. Consistently demonstrate value.
Here, here. So, there's a couple of things that I always think you should always be running your business on, which is creativity and innovation. And if there was ever a time to actually, pull that trigger, it's when things looks like it's going to get a bit rough, because maybe you can't do the same old stuff that you've been doing in the last months. Maybe you do have to adjust a few things. All right. What does it mean to be creative and innovative? It's easier said than done. Who wants to take a stab at, what it means for a business to be creative or innovative in today's world?
The one which springs to my mind, Julian, is again similar things. So it doesn't cost you any money internally to do, but invest in your staff training. Yeah, make sure that your internal staff understand the technology, because rather than just having a particular SKU or whoever is the vendor of the month and pushing them out that way, if they've got a broad understanding of the versatility of products, then you guys are going to be better placed, one, to do a little bit of front-end support in some occasions because it's really straightforward solutions, but more importantly, they're going to be able to advise that customer on that value add of why do you want that particular solution? Oh, because I want X, Y, Z. And we can stop them buying the wrong thing we began with. The other thing which they can also do is we have a few of them in the UK, so I'm sure they're all around the world, but we also have like specialist vendors who specialize in sort of like the boutique products. So sometimes someone wants a particular feature, particular product, a particular feature, and it's like, actually, there is one, and all it does is what you want, nothing else, and every other way it's completely useless, but it's £10 a user for a year's license. So look for those little easy tag-on sales which can be used to kind of like, hey, we can save you money. So I definitely think it all comes back to giving that right advice to the client. But for me, it's like that line of dominoes. If we don't value the customers, have their trust and their understanding, we do the same to our staff. There's linking to transparency. How do we then make the best sales? We can't do one without the other. But definitely, making sure they're licensed correctly, but that can save them some money. Moving them onto a different licensing scheme if there's, depending on the licensing variants, maybe more appropriate. Concurrent license versus floating licenses. These are all things we can answer if you speak to the guys and go, hey, what's your real need? It's like, do I need 10 developers on Visual Studio, 10 on C# and 10 on Delphi? It's like, no, actually, I don't do that. I only going to have 5 concurrent users. Marvelous. Save a small fortune every single year. But for me, think of that line of dominoes. The one we've got to invest in most is our people resource to make sure they build the right relationship with new customers and existing customers, because whatever advice you give them, until AI replaces those sales guys, it's those guys who are your human interface between opportunity and loss.
As you know, Julian, I'm a big fan of live music. I interview bands, I hang out with them, I talk to them often, and if there's a concert and a band is playing the same thing every single time, every year they come to town and they play the exact same set list, well, I'm no longer going to be interested in that band because I want something fresh and new. And I think as an IT company, we have to look at our set list. Are we the same company we were 1 year ago? If yes, then are we really progressing? Because the world is changing so fast. The IT, the whole surface of the IT world is changing. The landscape is changing. And if we're not changing this and having a different set list, different products and SKUs that we add, maybe removing some that are no longer relevant, I'm not going to be interested in that IT company. We have to remain relevant, just like a band has to remain relevant. They have to keep pumping out new material to make it worthwhile to go see them. And I think we need to constantly look for new ways to bring value. And that normally is a new product or a new service or a tweak on something, or sometimes letting something go.
Yeah, you really do have to innovate, right? I mean, you can't just be selling the same things that's on the shelf, right? And when we look at creativity and innovation, right? I always try to look at the actual customer, right? That you're selling to, the one who pays your bills, and you put yourself in their shoes and say, wait, if I was that company running that business, what does it look like? Is there something that they may not have seen? Is there something that I've seen in another customer that's similar, that is doing something very interesting and creative, that I can go back to that customer and say, hey, have you thought of doing this, right? Have you thought of doing that? All right. Because in the IT industry, MSPs actually see how these companies operate, right? And it's not very difficult to see some of the companies doing some interesting things, all right? And they're very, very similar. So if you were talking to one, dentist's office, right, or a lawyer's office, or a whatever, retail company, it's pretty easy to see what they're doing that's really different, right? And maybe you could say, well, wait a minute, maybe that other dentist company could use this, or that other lawyer company could do it. So innovation doesn't mean you have to be like an artist, right? To go out there and create something from scratch. It's about listening and observing from your customers, maybe even reading industry insights in those particular sectors that you're targeting to see where innovation is happening. Randall, what do you think? Jump in.
I think we need to be the check engine light to our clients. We need to be that warning light saying, I noticed something that maybe you don't have insight on, or that you haven't noticed. It could be something as simple as going to their Google, Google Maps and looking up the reviews that they have. I remember I was taking care of a restaurant many, many years ago, and I was looking at the reviews and nobody was caring for them. And they had some legitimate complaints that needed to be addressed, but the owners did not know about them because nobody was monitoring that part. So it could be something as simple as looking at Google reviews and seeing, the clients are going to tell you what's wrong. So listen to them. And sometimes you have to be a little creative in your way of getting that information. Maybe searching a company on Google, finding out what other companies are saying about them. They could be some valuable insights, or even it could be a competitor. Something I remember there was a moving company that got basically they were doing fraud. They were basically holding furniture hostage until they got a higher price than what was bid. And we sent that to our client that was in a moving company, and they were able to maybe do a little news article or posting showing how they're different. So sometimes even just like little news articles, send that out. It brings value. It's business intelligence, and that's what we're there for. We're the check engine light for our clients.
Brilliant. Love it. Nim, what do you see in innovation and creativity?
Couldn't have said it better than Randall. I mean, being that check engine light is absolutely important. And innovation doesn't have to be the big word that it is. It could just mean you being willing to do something differently that is out of your regular pattern in order to fit your customers' needs, right? So innovation doesn't have to be we invented this new thing or we're doing this, this other thing. It could just be that little amount of flexibility that you allow your process or your approach with the customer to change so that you can deliver what they want the way they want it done. And that's important. That flexibility and adaptability also count as innovation.
Good. You don't have to be a genius to innovate, right? You don't have to be an artist or exactly, and you can innovate. Innovate just bring something new to your clients that maybe they didn't know before, or maybe they were thinking about that. You could say, hey, by the way, your competitor does this and this and this. Maybe you should consider doing that. So,
and the secret, Julian, is to make it not intimidating, so that everyone on the team has the opportunity to innovate.
Exactly. Great stuff. Let's talk a little bit about digital marketing. In the world we're living in, there's lots of people thinking different ways when it comes to marketing when there's an economic challenge. First thing they pull is a marketing budget. That's usually a knee-jerk reaction for a very large amount of people. I believe McDonald's have the opposite. When the market is down, they double down on all those coupons and brochures and ads and whatever, because they found that when they come out of the economic downturn, they actually go much faster. They hyper jump than their competitors, because for some reason, people remember the ones that's been helping them with cost savings the most during the times of need. So you might have to burn a little bit during these times, but if you burn a little bit today, you may make 10x, 5x that when things become better, right? So digital marketing is a big question, of course, but what's your thoughts in what companies should do in terms of digital marketing as they see it right now in their company. Neil, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the starting point is you can't reduce your spend. It's the crazy thing. Like you said, it's very common that businesses do it. It's counterintuitive, but I think that you're right. They need to burn a bit of money. What they may want to do is be very targeted with that, niche it. Go after something like the security sector or an area where they're newly expanding into it, and make that their play. Because if you're a large multinational and you just want to spew your brand name everywhere, that's all you need to do because people already knew who you are. But for 90+% of MSPs, no one's ever heard of you unless they're already your customer. So find that niche where you can drive that awareness of you. So I think the key thing for you to add on as well is if you want to do digital marketing, don't forget to the physical stuff as well. Yeah, link the two together. This is an awful thing. People talk about, I almost want to abolish the term digital marketing and just say marketing, of which digital is one strand, because the biggest problem is how you're going to follow that up on. That advert you throw out there's not going to work unless connected to some follow-up post or get them to sign up to a mailing list or enter a competition to win or whatever. We've got to find something to draw that in. But I'd definitely say my number one top tip would be look for your niche.
Who wants to hit? Randall?
I agree. Niche is the way. When it comes to digital marketing, I'm not an expert as well, but I do know what I like. And I don't like a company that's always trying to sell me. I like a company that's telling me who they are, maybe doing a profile about their employees, a profile about their customers. I remember a coffee shop here in Montreal, tiny coffee shop. It was a sliver of a building, and it was the most popular coffee shop at that part of town. Not because they had the room, but they were cool, and their digital marketing was always about their clients. They would post who their clients are, a little bio of their clients. I thought that was brilliant because it was taking the focus away from them, and it became a culture to have coffee there. You're part of this culture, and I think a lot of companies kind of forget that when it comes to marketing. They're always talking about me. This is the new sale that we have. And those are the ones I unsubscribe to. The ones that bring value, that maybe let me know more who they are the ones that I follow, because that to me is more important. If I know who a company is, I can build a relationship with them. But if they're only trying to sell, then it's that can I help you question that makes us want to say, yeah, no, thank you, not just browsing.
I think you need to differentiate within that digital marketing that companies don't get confused. And what I mean by that is if you are a company and you're proactive and you've got your Facebook page and you're on your LinkedIn and you're all that communicating, always bear in mind that stuff is about community building. So anything which promotes or sells will never work because you're talking to the whole market, not the people who say they want to buy. So I say people need to separate between the things which are kind of the slow, organic building communities for long-term sales, as opposed to what I much prefer is, if I've got £1,000 product and it costs me £500 a click on Google AdWords, then that's good money invested because £500 gets me £1,000. Fantastic. I'll spend 50 grand on that. Not a problem. So being aware that if you're doing the organic and the social media side of digital marketing, that's marketing for attention. It's not for sales. They'll come later. Whereas if it's paid for advertising, that is designed to convert in after some form of nurturing or some form of upsell or communication piece into your sales pipeline, because those people by their search behaviors are indicating we want to buy your products.
Makes total sense. It's one of the things about eChannel News, our news organization, is that we've seen our subscriptions go out of the roof, and it is exactly because of that. We don't promote ourselves; we're promoting other people's coolness and stories and whatever. And we're doing it because we are genuinely interested in their stories and what they're bringing to the world, right? And that has value. So when you're sharing information that is not about you, that is about what's happening in the world, right? Or to other people doing great stuff, it's definitely better than just the me attitude. Nim, what are you guys doing for marketing over there?
I like to look at it as you've got your relevance, awareness, and then relationship, right? So I'm with Neil in the fact that the word digital probably needs to be abolished from the concept. Digital is just a channel within marketing altogether. And so, we like to focus on building awareness first, right? So that's all the social media stuff. That's all the community building, as Neil called it, because that just makes sure that when your name pops up in a conversation, somebody doesn't say, I've never heard of them before. They say, I saw something about them on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, right? And then there's the from awareness, you move to relevance. So now, because of the content you're pushing, somebody says, you know what? These guys seem to be talking a lot about something that matters to me, right? And that's where you convert that into a relationship, because that person then sees the need and proactively reaches out to you to say, I'd like to learn more about this article you post because I have the same problem. So those are kind of the three stages that we're focusing on and sort of building out.
Makes sense. So the key there is like drop the word digital because it's all marketing, period, and just do what you got to do to kind of draw attention, but don't go with the me attitude, right? Don't say I've got a sale happening for $29.95 for this license. Don't do that, and just be cautious again. If you go on LinkedIn and someone says, "Hey, I'll accept you as a contact," don't send the next email as, "Oh, I'd like to set up an appointment with you to talk to you for 10 minutes. You haven't earned that yet, and so please don't do that. Randy, you're about to say something.
Yeah, and I subsequently forgot.
I was just
So we'll jump to Neil.
I was just going to follow back through with saying, picking up what I said, and Nim's also kind of think about actually, if you understand your customers, you can improve that marketing tenfold. One of the business I'm involved with, we sell into the maritime sector, and although this is now slowly changing, it's long been the case that virtually 99% of all people in that industry would have been above the age of 55 and male. And so when we did digital marketing, nothing. When we emailed, nothing. When we put print brochures together, put an envelope and had it mailed to their desk, they all started to buy. So understand your customers, and there's no point being all swish and modern if your audience want a little brochure they can stick on their bookcase, and when they think of something, they go, I've got a brochure about that. It's exactly the same process as Nim was talking about in the digital space, but in an old-fashioned way. So when you build that strategy, definitely I'm going to agree with Nim again because it's my idea. Why wouldn't I agree with him? Abolish the word digital. It's marketing. It's just another channel. And when you're looking at channels, say we need a multi-channel approach. We can't just do one. If we just do one, it fails, it's game over. But if we split that, and then the other thing I'll say, because it should be what we do in all business practices, is before you do it, come up with your KPIs. What am I looking for? What is my results? Measure and collect that data after a quarter, and then go what's working. Because if you start marketing to 4 channels, you may be able to ditch 1 or 2 of them after 3 months because you can look at your results. But especially with big companies, if they've got a marketing team, what they tend to do is throw a lot of money at the wall, and providing the bottom line goes up, everyone's happy. It's always worth, again, to be more efficient, to look at saying, well, actually, where, is all that money equal return, or can we be smarter, reduce the spend on one and focus on another?
Randall, you remembered?
I remembered. I was, again, about throwing out that word digital, because marketing could be anything. It could be the lowest paid employee in your company, could be your marketing team also. For example, most people that are, I'll give you an example. I was just camping, like I said, in Sandbanks, and we went to a place. It was like one of these, they did some marketing and it looked like a cool place to go. But while I was there, one of the people that were serving us was kind of sassy, and they're kind of like throwing some attitude. And that's marketing, because I'm not going to recommend that place to anybody else because of that.
We're marketing.
So, they got me with the ad, but they lost me with the service. So marketing could be even our employees, the way they respond, and that could be trained, but it can also be a way to hire people. You hire people, you don't force them to smile, you just hire people that smile naturally. So, I think it's really important to make sure that even the people that are maybe the lowest paid in the company are maybe the most important sometimes when it comes to the image of the company, because they're the ones that normally interface with customers.
I want to get your take on something. It's a little bit on topic, but a little bit off topic. I mean, today, kind of like everywhere you go, whether it's a restaurant or, even a takeout joint for takeaway, whatever, there's always this thing now when you tap to go, right? There's a tip that pops up, right? Your 10%, 15, 20, 25, 30%, so on. And so you're going to pick up something from a takeout, right? And what's your take on paying tips when you're actually going to take away the actual food? What's your take on that?
Well, it's an interesting one, because coming from the UK, we don't really have that tip culture. So it's
good for you.
some restaurants do it, but it's like in the UK, it's going to be looking at them like they've got an extra head. And then we get very few confused when we're in America and Canada, and it's kind of expected. Like to keep, no, don't get it.
Wait until you come over now and see what the tips are charging. Randall, what do you think of that?
There's a whole meme about, here, I just flipped an iPad, tip me, which is basically what you're doing. You're going to the gas station, you're pumping up, they flip it around, and you pick up a candy bar or something, and they want a tip. And I really feel for those in the service industry. I feel they need to be paid. Restaurants for sure always tip. Even if the service is bad, I'm going to tip a fair amount. And if the service is good, I'm going to tip more. But I have my margin that I kind of like to stick in. And during the pandemic, when I went and picked up something at a fast food joint, I would give a modest amount, because I figured if everybody gave that little modest amount, it would really add to their bottom line at the end of the hour even.
Well, we did a lot more tipping during the pandemic because we felt that we needed to help.
But I think now it's getting awkward. And I went to a place. It was a cider tasting, and then I bought a 6-pack of cider to go, and there was 3 tips: 18, 20, and 25, with no opportunity. The only thing I had was no tip, so I ended up pressing no tip. But I appreciated it. Was a great service. So I went to my car, got some cash, gave her cash, because it was a lot less than that 18% on a product that I just picked up. So I think people need to. It's getting awkward. It's getting really.
It's
awkward.
getting weird. I don't want to dwell on the topic, but it's something that is there. And then we have a quick response.
Yeah, just a quick point. Like I treat that tipping for pickup a little differently. So in Randall's example with picking up a 6-pack, I wouldn't tip either. But I kind of look at the tip when you pick up food as an incentive based on your buyer's experience. So if I had the chance of ordering from a phone, parking in a parking lot, texting them that I've shown up, and they brought the food to me, and it's a pickup order, but my whole buyer's journey was flawless and has a really nice app and really quick delivery, I don't mind tipping 18% on that, because I paid for convenience, right? So there is a time and place for it. I agree it's getting a little out of hand, but when you pick up an order, think about if you are tipping, how is your buying experience? And that's what you're tipping for.
Interesting. Good perspective. Well, more innovation. That's what's happening out there. So we talked a little bit about everything. But I think wrapping this up, I think we've got about 8 minutes or so. The key thing is I would like to talk about, and we'll talk about some of the emerging trends, some additional technologies that you may want to double click on moving forward. But try to act sooner before you are forced to do so, right? Don't act when we're on it. This like desperation, because people smell that. But let's talk a bit about some technology trends, since this is a technology industry. If you had to pick a few trends that is happening now that maybe this is a good time to bring it to the forefront, what would they be? Then what would you go first?
In our case, it definitely is demand for managed security solutions. So the ability to provide eyes on glass, the ability to provide valuable insights on things that are happening within the environment before they become an incident, right? I think that's where the market is going. That's what customers want to see, especially the bigger ones.
So managed services. And Randall, any technologies that you would think they should maybe highlight?
I think by now everybody's gone to the cloud in some form or fashion. And I think what's happening, and also a lot of people have adjusted to work from home. I think the next big thing is to try to automate more using those cloud tools and do workflows and find ways to automate things to make the processes faster. I think really working on the process automation, RPA, whatever it is. RPA. Yeah. I think it's a big next step of evolving that cloud experience.
Any technologies, Neil, that people should double click on?
I've got nothing to add really, because I'd agree with both of them really. I mean, security is the big one, because especially now that you've got those home workers, you need to think about your internal business security even more. What's the home environment like? What software are you using to make sure you're getting the value from those employees? That's on one stage. And definitely automation. I think those are the two, from my mind, those are the two easiest wins. They're two areas where businesses are underprepared, and they know this now, and they know that they need to do more from it. So what we need to do is, from that rapport building, that relationship building, is match them to the best solutions in those two arenas. And if you do that, I think that to me springs the kind of the low hanging fruit of what we can all do, where there's plenty of vendors, great support out there, in opportunities for all of us.
Yeah, I'll add three more technologies onto the list. I mean, like 5G. It's a good time to start doubling down on that, because when you really look at what 5G can bring to a company, it's quite remarkable. Now, it's rolling out around the world at a pace, right? But if you can become an early adopter, you can actually identify the people who can, take the most advantage of 5G. And I just want to, for the record, 5G is not just about your phones being faster to download movies. It's about businesses being able to run, pretty aggressively with the wireless network, right? Removing that wire. And the other part of that is, and that enables IoT, right? So your conversation with 5G plus IoT, there's so many user cases around IoT that it's just raining IoT, right? What's the number? Like 25 billion, trillion, whatever IoT devices by 2025 or something. It's a lot. And get into that action. And something that most channel partners are not really, they leverage it in technologies they're using today, AI, right? But they're not quite there yet in how you can, sell AI to a company to make sense of the data, right? And there are companies now out there looking for channel partners with AI solutions that is, you don't need a data scientist to do. So with these types of applications, you can bring a new dimension, if you will, right, to your customers. So even if you're in cybersecurity or you're, digital transformation with Microsoft stuff and all the typical usual brands, right? Look a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, and maybe technologies like 5G and IoT and AI and maybe even blockchain and so on could actually bring a game-changing, opportunity to you and your customers, because they also need it. Those are the innovations that I hear from all the experts every day in terms of what we see that they're seeing blowing up. But I'll leave it with everybody with a bit of the last. We got 3 minutes left, and I'll start with you, Neil. What's your, wrap this up for me in a minute? What's your take on what's happening in the economy and how should people prepare for it, companies?
Well, I think you said it at the beginning, Julian, that we've got a habit of talking ourselves into recession if we're not careful. With that in mind, I think what you do is go into this with optimism and positivity, and do that by, I'm going to steal from Nim there as well, have that transparency across your business, prepare people for, we think things can get rocky. How do we as an organization build for a positive future? And then link that to one of the technologies with signposts and say, let's find that, let's align that to a niche, let's build our marketing strategy, and then drive that together. I think, there is, within what we're talking about this evening, there's another little mini roadmap to how you can bulletproof yourself and start to exploit the front end of those opportunities, which begin today. We don't need to be in recession for people to thinking about it. So we can start talking to people today about, let's prepare for it if the worst happens. I always think that's a great way of doing it. Prepare for the worst, and then you'll never be surprised.
Good stuff. Randall, what's your last wrap up?
I think of a roller coaster. When you're an economic downturn, when you're going downhill on a roller coaster, you can either put on the brakes or you can just let yourself go full tilt. And when you don't put on the brakes, it's much easier when things go back up. You've got that momentum going and you just make it up the hill. And if you put on the brakes when you're doing that economic downturn, that's when you need the chain to kind of take you up slowly while your competitors have already flew past that mountain. So pedal to the metal. Don't stop now. This is the time to really double down on your company.
Otherwise, you stay in the bottom part of the roller coaster.
You get stuck at the bottom.
Get hit by the next people coming behind you. Nim, what's your last take on it?
My parting thoughts are, focus on your core competency. Be the best that you can be at what you're really good at, and demonstrate that value to the maximum for your customers. And because you're focused on your customer and you're not all things to all people, consider a partner-to-partner relationship. Bring in the best of the best and serve your customers selflessly, and you will build the right amount of loyalty to surpass any downturn.
Well, that's a wrap for us. I say take all the advice been given here today and then some, right? Learn, get out there, check around. There's lots of people doing great stuff. Learn from them, copy if you must, right? But bring some innovation. And innovation doesn't mean you have to invent something. Bring some interesting things to the world. Again, as usual, my friends, thank you, Randall, Neil, and Nim. It's been a pleasure. Until next time.